Talofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Suisuiki. Coming up, an academic in Papua New Guinea says change is badly needed after the riots. Also,
so the public expect some decorum in their behaviour. That's all I could say.
The scandal involving two cabinet ministers continues to rock Fiji's politics. And later on, we tell Anua with a US Coast Guard lead about the Harriet Lane cutter. Papua New Guinea needs a giant wake-up call, according to a local academic. Andrew Anton Mako says the country's systemic dysfunction was plain to see in the rioting and looting throughout the country's main cities 2 weeks ago. Mr. Mako, who is with the Australian National University's Development Policy Centre, says the government has failed to address the underlying causes of violence for years. He spoke with Don Wiseman, firstly about how the outbreak of violence would have been avoided if systems had worked like they should.
That deduction should not have happened if things were working properly. That information could have been already transmitted through the system so that not only the police officers but all the public servants could have been assured that there was a glitch in the system, and then they would send the money back. The extra deduction, they will return the money in the next pay or so. So I think that information could have been made available to the officers quickly so that the protest that happened should not have happened if they have done that.
It's not the first time, though, is it? I think the PNG government is trying to present it as the sort of thing has never happened to us before, but it's just 18 months or so since an horrific election in which the violence level was at an all-time high. It's like there's a powder keg primed to explode at any moment.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Don. It's a bigger problem. Whatever that happened on Wednesday and the 10th was just the tip of the iceberg, right? This was going to happen. Governance is a big problem in this country, right? The government and the policymakers really need to take a comprehensive approach in addressing that. It's a big issue. And then with that, we got corruption and everything like that. In order to improve the public service machinery and for things to work, the government really needs to look at the administration part of the system that they have.
There's a whole series of areas around that, aren't there, in terms of training, staffing numbers, staffing pay, this sort of thing. It's been talked about for a long time. I've been covering stories about Papua New Guinea for years, and these similar sorts of things keep coming up in terms of the pressures on government departments and the pressure on wage earners and so on, but it just gets worse and worse.
Over the last 20 years or so, there wasn't any comprehensive reform to look at the public service machinery. I think the last attempt by the government to look at this was 20 or so years ago when the late, say, Makara Moroto was the prime minister, right? So since then, there hasn't been any sort of reforms to improve governance, improve public sector efficiency and all that, right? So that's the bigger problem, right? We should have picked up where Sam Makara left. So it's a bigger problem. It goes back many years, but I think if we had done something in the last 20 years to pick up from where Sam Makara left in terms of comprehensive reform to fix the issues, the administrative and governance issues of the country, we would not have be facing the problems we are facing at the moment. So it's going to be a big problem, whichever government, this government or whether new government comes on board or whatever happens, the government really needs to look into that issue as a big priority for them.
So where do you start? What's the first thing they need to do?
It has to start from the leadership level, right? Firstly, the government needs to know that it's a big issue to start off with, and then to get into the hard work. It's not going to be easy. They have to really work on it for a number of years. I don't think it will happen overnight. They will have to come up with a reform agenda, work on it for the next 4 or 5 years, right? So at the moment, what we are seeing is that they come up with reviews and things like that, and that they don't follow up with the actual work that really needs to be done, right? So the government said, okay, it is a problem, and then we're going to set up a work plan for another 4 to 5 years to actually look at it. It's not going to happen overnight.
Let's go back a wee way, because after the election in 2022, and there was a lot of talk about strengthening police and so on, and there have been a couple of legal changes that have given the police greater powers. I'm not sure whether any of those have been applied at this point, but what else has been done in that regard? Is that just something that was talked about then and put in the too hard basket?
There have been some reforms, but I think it's really looking at things that trying to address the symptoms, right? They're not really trying to address the core issues. So, for example, the ICAC, the Independent Commission Against Corruption, is really to look at corruption at the grander level, but then there's a lot of things at play at the lower levels of the society. For example, unemployment is a big issue, right? So the crime rate and things like that are happening in Papua New Guinea. It's just because there is no jobs for the young people of this country. So it is about looking at what are the underlying issues that is actually driving the social issues. So whatever the looting and the things that happen on the 10th of January is a symptom of what is actually happening. There are underlying issues like unemployment is a big issue that the government needs to look at. The high cost of living pressure that people are facing. Inflation is a symptom of high cost of production and high cost of doing business in Papua New Guinea. So they will have to look at addressing the underlying issues, not the symptoms.
So if you are addressing the unemployment issue, what do you do in a country like PNG? I know there's been talk for a long time about the agricultural potential, and anyone who's spent time in PNG can recognise that, but I don't know if that's changed very much in the last 20 years.
That's right. The focus is to be on the sectors that create jobs. So over the last few years, over the last decade or so, a lot of focus has been really on the resources sector, the mining, petroleum, the gas sector. Those sectors are really, we call enclave sectors. They got really limited linkage with the broader sectors of the economy. So, and the mineral sector do not create a lot of jobs. A lot of the jobs are done by either machines or highly skilled workers. So it is the sectors like agriculture, like fisheries, like tourism, forestry. Those are the sectors that really create jobs. So the focus of the government is to shift now towards improving those sectors, to invest a lot of money into these sectors. Not only money, but also reform policies that will make sure that the agricultural sector, the fisheries sector, the tourism sector are revived. If they're thriving, then a lot of the unemployed people will be able to find jobs in those sectors. So it is a shift that has happened at the national level. It has to be driven by the government and the policymakers to say that we will have to focus our shift towards these sectors that will create jobs for the majority of the people, especially the younger population of the country.
Fiji politics continues to ramp up, and the individuals at the centre of it all happen to be the two ministers embroiled in a sex and drug scandal. The General Secretary of the leading party of Fiji's coalition government says ministers must remember that they work for the taxpayer and are public servants and therefore must act accordingly. His remarks to RNZ Pacific follow a recent complaint against his own party member, Women's Minister Linda Tambuya, over her conduct, which is being investigated despite her saying the scandal is fake news.
Sex sells, and so there's fake news, and I find that, some public personalities who are impersonating as media personalities, have gone out there and sensationalized it.
People's Alliance General Secretary Usaya Wangatairewa spoke with Alicia Foon about the unfolding situations.
Well, I believe that the coalition is still strong because I haven't received anything that's untoward with the coalition till now. I haven't received any words or anything. So without receiving any official communication from the other parties, that's where I stand. I believe that the coalition is still strong. I sort of close off all the noise levels that's coming from various directions and just concentrate on maintaining the coalition.
And how would you describe what has been happening over the past week? Has this come as a surprise to the People's Alliance, or has this kind of been bubbling for a while?
I really could not comment on that. Maybe it's bubbling within the other party, the Social Democratic Liberal Party, but we haven't heard anything about what's happening in their party with anything bubbling there. But as far as I know, they've called a management meeting to discuss the dismissal of the Minister for Education. That was the headline that came out at the beginning of the week. That's about all I could say about that.
People's Alliance confirmed that there was a complaint against Rambuka's cabinet minister at the centre of a sex and drug scandal. Now, that was Linda Tambuya. Can you speak more to this, and where is that at?
I cannot speak more to that. All I can say is, as we've mentioned in our last press release, which was on Monday after our meeting, Executive Council meeting, is that the letter has been received and they've activated the part of the Constitution where we've started an investigation, which will then report back to our management committee, the inquiry team, and then they will decide what will happen after that from the outcome of the investigation. And once that complaint is accepted by the executive committee to be investigated, they're given 21 days to complete their job. That's all I could say.
And can you speak to the nature of the complaint?
I can't answer that.
But is it related to this alleged sex and drug scandal?
I can't answer that.
Do you have any comments about the conduct of ministers in the People's Alliance Party and what's expected?
I can't answer that either.
Do you believe that things that ministers do on their own terms should be private matter and not for public discussion? We spoke to a political expert that really backed Linda Tabuya, saying that she was an extraordinary minister, and despite the complaint that he does not believe that she should be dismissed, and that anything that she does in private, whether it's on a ministerial trip or not, should not be a black cross on her name.
Well, all ministers must remember that not only all ministers, all parliamentarians must remember that they are public officers, and they are paid for by the taxpayers. Their salaries and extras that come with, or the privilege that comes with the position that they are filling in. So the public expect some decorum in their behaviour. That's all I could say.
Do you have full confidence in the coalition and in Dambuka?
Yes, of course.
And what do you have to say to the people of Fiji who are concerned about what's happening, considering there is so many layers to these discussions with the alleged affair, ministers being dropped and then reinstated, and then this complaint with Linda?
That's something that the party leader and Prime Minister can only comment on. I can't comment on that.
But as the People's Alliance General Secretary, are you able to provide any reassurance or comments to people that voted you in?
I am not in a position to do that. That would be the party leader's role to comment on that.
When can we hear about the decision surrounding the complaint?
They've given 21 days from the day it was accepted into the management committee, and we could expect something from that. So that was last Monday. So we work on 21 days from there. And
then from there, will you be making an announcement or providing a press statement?
Yes, we'll call a management committee meeting where they will present their findings, and then they'll deliberate on that. And if they decide to make an announcement about that, then it'll be their call.
So you can only say that a complaint was made, but you can't tell us what the nature of the complaint is. Is that correct?
I can't.
Okay. Are you aware that Minister Linda Tabuya went to the Australian body for online images and cyber security? Are you aware that she asked for these images to be removed?
Well, I read it in the papers. That's something beyond our control in Fiji. Do I support what she's requested? Well, she's well within her right to do that, then of course we will support it. As I said, it's up to it's her right to do that, and she's complained. And we'll just have to leave it at that.
She responded to us saying it's fake news. So if these images are fake, why has she requested for them to be taken down? Is this part of the investigation into the complaint?
It has nothing to do with that. That's her own prerogative that she's requested that.
In Hawaii, the US Coast Guard welcomed the Harriet Lane, a 270-foot Indo-Pacific support cutter or ship with a 100-person crew. It was recently relocated from Portsmouth, Virginia to Hawaii last month in December. The cutter is one of the US's efforts to strengthen its relationship with the Indo-Pacific region, with a focus on advising, training, joint deployment and capacity building. Harriet Lane will be making a total of 7 stops in the Pacific this month and throughout February. Joining me to talk about the Harriet Lane is Captain Jennifer Conklin. Kia ora, Jennifer. Tell us more about this cutter.
Yeah, kia ora. So the Coast Guard cutter Harriet Lane, we're so excited that she's transitioned. She was originally home ported on the east coast of the United States, but she has now moved over to Hawaii. And her first patrol starts in about a week, and she'll be heading down through the Pacific to visit all of our Pacific Island partners to kind of build on capacity, kind of shared experiences, and kind of just continue our presence in the Pacific.
Now, before we get into Harriet Lane's missions and operations, just going back to the basics, what exactly does the U.S. Coast Guard do?
Yeah, so the U.S. Coast Guard, so I've been in the Coast Guard now for more than 20 years. Something that I'm passionate about is, it's a public service, it's a maritime safety administration and agency, but we're also a law enforcement agency. And so through those kind of different avenues, you get to see a lot. So there's the humanitarian side of whether it's search and rescue or emergency management, or, you get into the law enforcement pieces where we, kind of deter malign behavior and drug smugglers and different things like that.
Now, for you, was it an area of service that you always wanted to work in?
Yeah. So I think for me personally, obviously, I think at some point early on, I was drawn to public service, and then the opportunity to be on or near the ocean on a regular basis, and then contribute to like a humanitarian service. The Coast Guard's always been, I don't know how we kind of found each other, but it's definitely kind of been a natural fit. So yeah, and of course the adventure that comes with it, going out on the ocean. I mean, the Pacific obviously is massive, and that was my first posting out here, and I have family in the Pacific, so it's kind of a natural fit for adventure and humanitarian service.
Now, you mentioned that the Harriet Lane is going to be heading to the Pacific, and it will be stopping at 7 Pacific countries. What will the ship and its crew be doing there exactly? How long will the Harriet Lane be in the region for?
So she's home ported in Hawaii now, so she'll kind of be an enduring presence out here. But her first planned trip, and we haven't confirmed all these places, but the intention is for her to go to first American Samoa, followed up with Samoa. And while she's there, she'll be doing fisheries engagements, operations, but also within, in APIA, we have some Pacific environmental response folks rep that they'll be engaging with as well. So really, when we look at her, I should probably rewind a little bit. When we look at her patrol, the Harriet Lane's patrol, it's really about all the Coast Guard missions and kind of capabilities that we can bring to the region that are, relevant. So whether that's fisheries and law enforcement, conservation, maritime safety, stewardship, those types of things. It's kind of the full package is what we're trying to kind of do with this cutter. So fisheries, environmental response, emergency management. So, like I said, American Samoa, and then hopefully on to Fiji. And then she'll hopefully be conducting some search and rescue exercises with the Fijian Navy while she's there and different SAR authorities. And then on to Vanuatu and a longer break in Australia to kind of reset in Cairns, and then up into Papua New Guinea, Nauru, a brief stop in Marshall Islands on her way back home. That's kind of the full circuit that we're planning on and hoping that it all comes to fruition, which is about 35, 80 days.
That's a lot of days there. So how do Coast Guard missions and engagements benefit Pacific countries and communities?
Yeah, so first of all, I think that the U.S. Coast Guard is a natural partner. Obviously, the Pacific Islands, it's, they're all maritime countries and states. And, we talk about the Pacific Island leaders. They always say, it's not the ocean that divides us. It's the ocean that connects us. And so when we talk about port security, we talk about sovereignty, we talk about fisheries and stewardship with the fisheries. These are all things that are naturally in the Coast Guard's kind of, what we say in Hawaii, we say kuleana, but in your area of responsibility. I think that as we share practices and we can kind of build on each other's capabilities and capacities, that I think we can, we can all do more collectively versus, each trying to tackle these issues individually. I think for all of us.
That's Pacific Waves for today. To listen back, head over to rnzi.com/programs. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio podcasts. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, Tō Whāsui Fua.